No, please, you're not entitled to do that. The flip-flopping from the Prime Minister is manifest. They were supposed to have impeachment. There's no impeachment. Fixed election day, no fixed election day. Ring fencing the NHT, they have taken over $130 billion out of the NHT. Cannot be trusted.
Me not trust none of them boy, the road boy. Member.
Greetings and welcome to my viewers and subscribers. Yes, it was a heated debate first night, over an hour a debate. But you what we do? We break it down in a half an hour so the people them can hear the key points where them touch upon. You know what I mean? Market G and Broker touch upon. You see? So we put it together, the key points them, the highlights them, so you the viewers and subscribers can get a preview of what has taken place on the debate. You know what I mean? Because Market G, Broker upon some things, and Broker try to defend himself and try to pull up some things by Market G. So if you miss it, me people, we have it for now. But now if you go watch the whole thing, I will break it down in a half an hour and touch upon the real key points them so the people them can be entertained and be aware and even make up their mind if they want to go vote. So without further ado, people, I will play the clip, I will play the debate, and let me know who you think fit to become Jamaica's next Prime Minister.
Dr. Holness, government members have recommended taking the Auditor General off the Integrity Commission. There have been changes made by your administration to the Office of Political Ombudsman that have virtually destroyed its effectiveness as a check on the behavior of politicians. And there have been constant attacks by members of your administration on the Integrity Commission and on media and civil society groups that criticize your administration. Shouldn't Jamaicans be concerned about what appears to be a pattern by your administration of undermining oversight bodies in the public sector, civil society, and media?
There is absolutely no attempt by my administration, and indeed myself, to undermine any oversight body. Indeed, we have acted to strengthen and make them far more efficient. In placing the oversight of the political ombudsman under the office of the Electoral Commission, that's a move to strengthen and give it far more institutional framework. I myself have been very complimentary and acted in a very dignified way as it relates to the Integrity Commission.
Mr. Golding will have the opportunity to respond.
There has been a definite pattern of hostility from the Jamaica Labour Party government towards the institutions mentioned in the question. In particular, the Integrity Commission, largely because it is well known that there are at least 10 members of Parliament who are under investigation for illicit enrichment, a serious corruption offence, of which the only one to be known is the one for whom a report has been completed and sent to the Parliament, which is you, Andrew. As a result of that, they have done their very best to try to neuter that critical institution, including the Prime Minister bringing that institution to court to undermine its effectiveness and indeed eliminate it entirely.
Mr. Golding, Keith Duncan says the PNP's proposal to increase the income tax threshold to 3.5 million is impractical and impossible to fund without new taxes. Can you explain how these planned tax breaks will work without hurting the economy?
The context in which we have decided to increase the threshold to 3.5 million is the hollowing out of the middle class in this country. Working families finding it extremely difficult to make ends meet. And we believe with the debt to GDP ratio having now, after 13.5 years of belt tightening and austerity, having now reached the cusp of the target of 60% of GDP introduced into the fiscal rules in law under Portia Simpson Miller, this is a time, this year it's expected to actually, with the readjustment of the definition and calculation of GDP, this is the year that we expect to achieve that target. That will release 2.5% to 3% of GDP of additional resources, which were not previously budgeted for in the fiscal policy paper. That is more than sufficient to pay for our entire program, including the $3.5 million increase to 3.5 million of the tax threshold, which will make our civil servants and our middle managers, and indeed most of Jamaicans who are presently suffering under the high burden of the cost of living, have money that they can spend, they can fix up their homes, extend their homes with a room, buy a car if they don't have one, pay down debt where they may be in arrears. It is necessary to preserve the country from brain drain and to keep the society intact.
The hollowing out of the middle class is an act of the PNP. They totally decimated the middle class. It is the Jamaica Labour Party that introduced the increase in the non-tax threshold that recreated a middle class in Jamaica. In fact, when you look at the salary profile of PAYE contributors, you would see that their salaries have all risen. It is a Jamaica Labour Party through the compensation review that has increased salaries by over 200 billion Jamaican dollars for public sector workers. The current proposal of the PNP is unworkable. With an expert forensic auditor, the findings of that report have suggested no corruption. There have been no charges. Every aspect of my report, every aspect of my personal life and my personal financial details are in the public domain. I am the politician about which Jamaica knows the most. And therefore, I am the politician who can stand with the greatest moral authority to treat with any matter that is considered corrupt, as I have done in the past. And I want to give this assurance to the Jamaican people that you know me, you know about me, you can trust me, and you know that I stand against corruption.
Andrew, what they know about you is that you have 28 bank accounts, that you received several $1 million in cash deposits from anonymous donors in your bank account, that your companies had transactions of over $400 million, several thousand transactions between them, and that Positive Jamaica Foundation, a non-profit which you are intimately connected with, provided resources which you use for personal investments through your personal company. We have signed the Leadership Code of Conduct developed by Integrity Commission. All of our spokespersons and myself have signed. None of your people have signed it. I am committed to ensuring that all members of the executive, when we form government, will have their Integrity Commission declarations published, not just the leader of the opposition and what should happen, but hasn't happened in your case because you're not certified, the Prime Minister. So the whole question that has been asked is an excellent question. And we really need to step up our vigilance against corrupt behaviour, nepotism and cronyism. The volume of scandals under this Jamaica Labour Party government is unprecedented. Over the number of ministers who have had to be removed from frontline duty, many of them parked in the naughty corner in OPM rather than being sacked. It is a disgrace to the country, and your personal situation where you're operating under a deep cloud because your Integrity Commission declarations are not certified, also is something which Jamaica cannot go forward with.
The country should not be distracted by protracted periods of uncertainty. Yet, that's exactly what happened with this year's election. After 2 consecutive terms in office, you have failed to deliver on this promise. Why?
Your research into this matter, I respect the question, is incomplete. At the calling of the 2020 general elections, I explained to the public in Parliament that our government actually started work on fixed election date, and we found that it was inconsistent with our constitutional arrangements. And therefore, we did not include it in our 2020 manifesto. It is no longer a part of our platform. More to that, however, is the fact that in seeking to have all of these previous considerations included, we went about putting in place a constitutional reform commission that would bring all the considerations for constitutional reform under an expert review. That expert review was thwarted by the opposition. So, yes, these considerations were considered from 2016, but the reality of our constitutional arrangement made us take a different route, which is to go to a comprehensive constitutional reform which was frustrated by the opposition.
Just before I respond, just to point out that Mr. Holness's data is not current. The Fiscal Commissioner issued a release, I think it was today actually, indicating that with the National System of Accounts being updated, GDP has been adjusted, and we're now at 62% of GDP. That's what the debt is at the end of March this year, and we will more than likely achieve 60% this fiscal year. No, please, you're not entitled to do that. The flip-flopping from the Prime Minister is manifest. They were supposed to have impeachment. There's no impeachment. Fixed election day, no fixed election day. Ring fencing the NHT, they have taken over $130 billion out of the NHT. Cannot be trusted.
Just reminding that there is a format to the debate and asking the debaters to respect the format to which they have agreed.
This question comes from Janine. Parliament has passed a constitutional amendment bill and a referendum bill to transition Jamaica into a republic. Could you clarify the economic and administrative implications of this transition and how you intend to ensure that the process doesn't distract from Jamaica's economic priorities like debt reduction, investment diversification, and public services?
In answer to the question, we can whistle and ride. So we have done very well as a nation in reducing our public debt. We ensured that the fiscal rules were very strong with an algorithm, an equation in the fifth schedule to the Financial Administration Audit Act that determines the fiscal balance that must be hit by each year's budget, and that has ensured that successive governments have stayed on course to take it down to 60%. We can do constitutional reform, and we have achieved that consensus yet. On the critical issue of decolonization, in particular our final court, which is now the Privy Council, the King's Court, that makes orders in the name of the King, as opposed to the regional court, which has been established, the Caribbean Court of Justice, which Jamaica helped to design, helped to fund, and which has developed over the last 20 years a reputation for independence and excellence. There are aspects of the bills that are in Parliament now that we have big problems with. In particular, the fact that effectively it will allow the Prime Minister to appoint the President, because a simple majority of both houses will do it if we do not agree who that person is. I think that is wrong. I think that the President of the country must command the trust and confidence of both sides of the political aisle, and indeed the wider public.
To be clear, the bills before Parliament do not give the Prime Minister the ability to appoint the President. We are the party that have advanced the greatest, the process of repatriating our sovereignty. I am a Jamaican through and through, and I want to see my country's sovereignty represented by a Jamaican. It puzzles me as to why the opposition is trying to frustrate this. The opposition says we must always consult the people, yet they do not want to consult the people on a fundamental architecture of our society, our final court of appeal. They are inconsistent, they are hypocritical, flip-floppers. They were the ones who nudged, encouraged, and agreed with the government that a process should be started for the repatriation of our sovereignty. Midway the process, they have turned around to say they have challenges with it. What is it that they really want? Are you truly a Jamaican?
Mr. Golding, the PNP is promising a tax break for small businesses for the first 3 years of formally incorporating, as well as a raft of other targeted tax relief measures. How do you respond to criticisms that your tax plan reintroduces inefficiencies, tax avoidance and corruption into the tax system that have been eliminated over the past 15 years?
First of all, I think the Prime Minister repeated innuendo or direct attack which has been leveled by his party on my nationality. And, you know, I just wanted to just make it absolutely clear that I am indeed born here as a Jamaican. Here is my birth certificate, and it shows I was born at the University Hospital on July 19th, 1965, And it's right here. I hope your camera can pick it up. And I have a copy for you, Prime Minister, right here. And I wish you could provide me with a copy of your certification, but of course you can't do so. Now, on the question of tax, there's a third schedule to the GCT Act now, which has a long list of items which are not subject to GCT that are exempt. We feel that laptops and other devices are critical tools of trade, and it is wrong to tax them, and we are going to add them to that list. And similarly, sports equipment, which is vital for social cohesion. Sports is a critical part of keeping young people away from straying down the wrong path and so on. Why are we taxing those items? That cost of living is already high. So I don't agree. The system we have already caters for items which should not be taxed. And we're simply saying we want to adjust those items to include things that should be there but are not yet there.
The Labour Party is the only political organisation to have reduced taxes. We reduced the GCT from 16.5% to 15%. And we have done so in a way that has not compromised our revenues or the sustainability of future programs. All, and I repeat, all the tax suggestions and promises of the opposition will compromise our fiscal arrangements and place us back in debt or result in increased taxes. The best way to provide social services is to identify the persons who need it.
Thank you, Dr. Holness.
The Rio Cobre is a major water source for the St. Catherine Plains and communities in and around Spanish Town. Yet, since 2019, under your watch as Environment Minister, there have been close to a dozen chemical spills, causing fish kills and disrupting lives. You say you're a champion of the environment. Why hasn't there been tougher sanctions for the repeated breaches of environmental permits by the companies culpable?
The Jamaica Labour Party has put in very tough sanctions, including the requirement for the provision of bonds. Is something that I am personally very serious about, and we will put in legislation to end discharge into the Rio Cobre. It becomes even more important as we have now put in place the Content Rio Cobre water project, for which we are pulling 15 million gallons of water from the Rio Cobre per day. So we must protect that asset, and I give the public my sincere commitment that we will protect the Rio Cobre.
Quickly, just to say that the JLP is not the only party to have reduced taxes. The PNP reduced the personal income tax rate from 33.3% to 25%. We reduced the GCT rate from 17.5% to 16%. There's been reductions of taxes on both sides. They plan to reduce, they say, income tax from 25 to 15, which is going to help the rich and the ministers who pay themselves 200+ % pay increases. On the environmental issue, you are the one who overturned NEPA's decision not to grant a permit for the mining of the Dry Harbour Mountains, which is a very sensitive nature reserve. You're flip-flopping again, Andrew.
As many Jamaicans would like to see the full rollout of body-worn cameras on our police officers, even more so now given the increase in fatal police shootings. Will this be something that you'll prioritize should you be elected?
First of all, I think it's very important to acknowledge and commend the excellent work done by the police force over the last year and a half in bringing the rate of violent crime, in particular murders in the country, down from the intolerable levels where it had been under this government. More murders committed in Andrew Holness's 2 years in office than any other 2-year term in the history of Jamaica. The police have finally abandoned the failed policies that we did our best to stop, the mass use of states of emergency, which the court has ruled as unconstitutional, and have gone now to a much more targeted approach, a much more strategically sound approach. Having said that, we do feel that it's very important that the public as a whole must have trust and confidence in the police, because the police rely on intelligence and information from the public. And therefore, if the public feel that there's excessive use of force and there's no accountability for it, they're not going to be as cooperative as we need them to be. I think, therefore, it's in the interest of the Jamaican society and the police themselves to have the benefit of body-worn cameras, especially when they go on special operations, so there can be no question, nobody can accuse them wrongly of having used excessive force when the force was legitimate as used. And to the extent that there may occasionally be an excessive use of force, the persons are held accountable for that in accordance with the law. That's what the rule of law requires.
The government is already in the process of procuring and acquiring body-worn cameras. Several thousands of them are under procurement and will be deployed shortly to the police force. We consider this as absolutely important in giving confidence to the public regarding the actions of the police force. And the police themselves want to have these cameras as protection for themselves. Interestingly, however, the leader of the opposition states that the states of public emergency did not work. Now, murders under the PNP increased to over 1,000 murders in 1997 and remained there for over 30 years. It is the Jamaica Labour Party in 3 consecutive years that have reduced murders by 55%. The states of public emergency worked. The states of public emergency were supported by the PNP when Peter Phillips was the leader of the opposition, and it reduced murders by 27%. Since we did not have the cooperation of the opposition, murders went up. A question must be asked: who is responsible for the increase in murders when there was a tool that could have saved lives? It is a serious question.
For you to confirm that you held dual citizenship and weeks for you to renounce it. Why didn't you acknowledge the issue up front, and why should Jamaicans believe you will be forthcoming with them on any issue, even if it's uncomfortable in the first instance?
I didn't hesitate to acknowledge dual citizenship. I was born in Jamaica. I had a British father, and I inherited British citizenship by descent from him. And that's lawful under the laws of Jamaica, and indeed parliamentarians in Jamaica are permitted to be dual nationals. I therefore didn't consider it to be something which was problematic. However, when it was raised last year and politicized, I decided I want to know what the Jamaican people felt about it, because I thought really my response ought to be driven by them. We did an internal poll. It showed that a majority thought I should renounce, and so I did. And I renounced my British citizenship in August last year.
You know, this is a strange one. A man who wants to represent his country must choose his country. He doesn't need to ask anyone. He should choose. And that's why we say we choose Jamaica. It is indeed of concern that it was not until your 40s, when you were becoming a minister of government, that you sought to have a Jamaican passport. It is not your birth that makes you Jamaican. It is the choices you make for your country, including supporting a process that would make a Jamaican head of state here, including getting a Jamaican passport.
Dr. Holness, in your 2016 manifesto, you said, quote, will make it mandatory that the appointment to sensitive posts be approved by a 2/3 majority in each House of Parliament, thereby requiring consensus between government and opposition. Now, the posts identified included the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions. Not only did you not implement this, but you disregarded the opposition's objections in the case of the recent extension, which led to a court case. Wasn't this a betrayal of the principle of bipartisanship that you had been proposing 9 years before?
Absolutely not. And indeed, in some instances, there are parliamentary review of sensitive positions. And I want to be also very clear that the constitutional reform process that we have put in place would take into consideration all of these proposals that were made. We cannot tinker with the Constitution, doing a little thing here and a little thing there, and therefore we decided to put it in a comprehensive process, again which the opposition has thwarted. But since I have some time, let me also address some other issues about the leader of the opposition. In my own Integrity Commission report published in Parliament, there were no findings of corruption. All my assets are in Jamaica, and I have declared everything to the Integrity Commission. The leader of the opposition, however, also had a report from the Contractor General previously, which found that they benefited from public resources in an irregular way. They termed it a sweetheart deal. In my report, there is no such thing. None of my resources are ever connected to any public funds or any public resources. However, for the leader of the opposition, the report was very clear that their operations were considered to be irregular and a sweetheart.
Thank you, Dr. Holness.
The Prime Minister has no interest in bipartisanship. He has strong dictatorial tendencies and really would prefer not to consult with the opposition at all if he didn't have to. And I say that based on my experience with him over the last 5 years. He talks about he didn't want to tinker with the Constitution. Then why did he seek to amend the Constitution as a one-off, tabling the bill and seeking to pass it on the same day to extend the DPP's tenure beyond what was constitutionally allowed? That was tinkering, Prime Minister, so come on. And in terms of Integrity Commission reports, my declarations have been certified every year as being proper. Yours have not, because you are under investigation for illicit enrichment.
On the same issue of the DPP's appointment, Principal Dr. Holness doesn't require constitutional amendments, though. And if it is that you were committed to the principle of bipartisanship, why would you have rejected such strongly worded opposition coming from the opposition leader?
At the end of the day, this matter was taken to the court, and the courts decided, and the DPP was reinstated. I want to also clarify something that the leader of the opposition said. The investigations carried out by the Integrity Commission are at an end. I am not currently under any investigation. There were no findings of corruption or charges. The leader of the opposition continues to try to weaponize these things because that is the only crutch he has to stand on. I, Andrew Holness, am thoroughly transparent by virtue of this investigation.
Again, Andrew Holness is being disingenuous and tricky. The Integrity Commission referred his matters to the Financial Investigations Division, a law enforcement agency charged with investigating serious financial crimes, for further investigation. What was his response? When there was a vacancy at the head of it, he sought to appoint or influence the appointment of somebody who is his close personal friend and who had said publicly on nationwide radio that he didn't see anything wrong in the report on Mr. Holness's financial situation, the Integrity Commission's report. It was clearly a set-up job, and we feel that very strongly that this needs to be addressed.
Malik on Facebook says, many Jamaicans feel the economic growth that's been reported hasn't lowered their grocery bills or electricity costs. How do you measure economic success beyond the statistics?
The first measure is income. And 280,000 jobs have been created in Jamaica, which means that more Jamaicans have income. There is a rise in income. Let's look at the minimum wage. The Jamaica Labour Party government has tripled the minimum wage. So there are more Jamaicans earning more at the lower levels of our country. Further, access to basic amenities. 350,000 Jamaicans have access to potable water, and in our next term, we will ensure that the 900,000 Jamaicans which now don't have reliable or full access to water will have access to water. Transportation, public transportation. We have done an amazing job in reducing bus fares and increasing the convenience and efficiency of public transportation, including implementing a rural bus fare system. On electricity, we have reduced the GCT on electricity, a promise made by the previous government and not kept. We have done it in a sustainable way. But more importantly, we have not placed any new taxes on the people of Jamaica since our government has been managing the fiscal affairs of this country.
First of all, I think the question is sound because statistics don't tell the full picture. Jamaica's competitiveness has been falling, yet they say that we have record low unemployment. Several 100,000 Jamaicans are outside the labour force and are not measured for that purpose. And indeed, you're regarded as being employed if you're employed 1 hour a week. 55% of Jamaicans are suffering from food insecurity. That is what the United Nations says, the FAO, which is an agency of the UN, says. 55% of Jamaicans are not getting adequate nutrition. That is not consistent with prosperity or low poverty rates or low unemployment rates. As for transportation costs, those are extremely high for many Jamaicans, which is why we want to introduce the RIDE program, a subsidy for rural children to help them to get to school in an affordable way. It's $10,000 per child who needs it in each family. So if you have more than one child, each one of them would qualify for this, because we recognize that that is one of the causes of absenteeism in schools at the moment. As for electricity, the rate and cost of electricity under this government has gone way higher than where we left it at 23 cents per kilowatt hour. Now it's over 40. And as for the GCT, they are providing a subsidy at the moment, but they haven't said for how long, and there's no commitment to keep it on.
Thank you, Mr. Golding.
Communities like Charlemont, Birdsucker, Acadia, and many others across the corporate area have complained and have taken the government to court for inadequately regulated developments. Justice Hart Hines, in a 2021 ruling, said the KSAMC and NEPA have been dilatory in their mandate to enforce local planning laws and regulations. In December 2021, he said work was being done to restructure the entire approval process, yet the issues persist. Why isn't more being done to force the KSAMC and the NEPA to do their jobs to enforce the building regulations?
When that comment was made, the situation was as you have said. Since then, there have been significant improvement in enforcement, and including a new planning order for Kingston and St. Andrew, which clarifies many of the issues that were in contention, including we have included more inspection officers at the KSAMC, and there are more cases now being brought to court which are being prosecuted. So there has been an improvement. However, I believe that there is still much more work to be done in terms of increasing the enforcement capabilities. And yes, there are some legislative changes that need to be clarified, particularly as to how titles are issued and how densities are approved.
Since the People's National Party assumed the leadership in the council of the KSAMC, the new Mayor Andrew Swaby has been pursuing internal governance reform, including persons from outside, to try and improve standards and processes, make them more transparent and effective, so that the citizens of the corporate area can expect higher levels of governance. I think it's unfortunate that in the case of Mr. Holness and his wife, they are in the business of real estate development, or certainly she is, and that presents serious conflicts of interest which have manifested themselves in some of their own schemes that they have developed. I think we need to have rules which preclude that kind of activity so that there's no question of conflicts of interest. Mr. Holness, the Integrity Commission, in their court filing in the case that you brought to try and strike down the act and eliminate the offence for which you are being investigated, have said that you had money in the Ponzi scheme Olint and you got it out, while others suffered losses. You had money in Cash Plus, another Ponzi scheme where people lost lots of money, you got it out. And of course, you had money in SSL, and you were able to withdraw your money before it collapsed. In fact, I would say the only person that Usain Bolt has not been able to catch up with is you. And I want to ask you, how do you think and why do you think the people of Jamaica should trust you to be in charge of the governance of the country for a third term with that track record and with that cloud hanging over your head?
The leader of the opposition is a liar and cannot be trusted. I lost money in Cash Plus and Olent. However, the PNP accepted and received $1 million from Olent. He has no credibility to talk about Ponzi scheme. They benefited from the Ponzi scheme to fund their election campaign. He questions my wife's integrity about development. My wife and my family are hard-working Jamaicans. We started off with the taxes like many other Jamaicans, and I have worked hard. He has sought to weaponize that. But the people who receive me when I go into the country, they say, Andrew, don't worry. No weapon formed against you shall prosper.
I've made the point that for the Prime Minister and his wife to be in the real estate business when so many of the agencies of government which regulate that business fall under his ministry of economic development and job creation creates the possibilities for conflicts of interest, and I stick by that position.
The leader of the opposition speaks about integrity and trust. He was an advisor to a former Minister of Finance that put in place a policy of high interest rate, for which he acted as a broker for the government to invest loans and bonds for which he received a commission of high interest rate, to the point where one of his members described this as the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich. He, the Topanaris lawyer, has made billions of this, yet he does not disclose this in his integrity report. In fact, he doesn't even have a house in Jamaica. How can we believe you? And do you have assets in overseas companies for which you have not disclosed?
I've disclosed all my assets, and that's why my Integrity Commission declarations are certified. Your allegations are scurrilous and false. You made reference to DBNG, although you didn't call the name. DBNG was established in 1992 as an investment firm by 3 young Jamaican entrepreneurs. When the financial sector meltdown occurred some years later, and FinSAC was established as a response to try and protect the savers of this country so they didn't lose their money in their deposits in the banking system and their pensions and so on, DBNG, like other financial firms at the time, had to navigate that carefully to survive. We eventually were approached by a leading international bank, Scotiabank, who did a thorough due diligence on the company. It's a listed company. We were a listed company from inception. Our audited financial statements are public. Our quarterly financial statements are public. They looked at us inside out and upside down, found nothing, absolutely nothing untoward, and they bought the company. And we have nothing to hide on when it comes to DBNG. I would say, why is your government, having spent $200 million on this Commission of Inquiry into FinSAC, hiding the FinSAC report? Is it because you and your wife bought a house from somebody who had been FinSAC'd? You're a hypocrite, Andrew Holness, to be accusing me of anything in relation to FinSAC when you have been a direct beneficiary of the losses of somebody who was FinSAC, who lost their home because of FinSAC.
Again, you go to attacking my wife when you, according to the Contractor General's report, benefited from a sweetheart deal that was irregular. You benefited off the backs of the Jamaican people in creating your wealth. You were a connected party with the then Minister of Finance, and you advised and created the FinSAC debacle with high interest rate. You benefited from FinSAC. I did not purchase a FinSAC house. I bought a house on the open market. And again, you come with weaponized lies. Your lies will not work.
It's been a heated debate, people. Jah knows that integrity are the main thing. Integrity. Jah know the Prime Minister tried defend himself still, you know. But Marky G a fling a question upon him. Marky G ever back out him Jamaican birth certificate. A bag of thing go on, people. Marky G bring up all bro God wife night. A bag of thing talking to people. So more only the viewers them want to think about it. the debate in the comment section, people. Let me know thoughts and let me know what you think. Because next week, election, I want to know if Anjo I get back an opportunity to run the country or the people may go choose a new leader. Let me know thoughts, people. Because right now, the thing I get more sticky, the thing I get more drastic, the thing I get more hype. So let me know thoughts, people. Let me know what you think. We're going to win this election September 3. You know what I mean? Give thanks for watching. Big up on yourself. Don't know a thing said. Blessed love. Banging.